Hello, welcome to these trainings about online assessments. Online assessments is a feature that allows you to upload a questionnaire, a CSV file that actually contains all the questions you want to make out, and send that to someone. And that someone can log in into Eramba to a special portal, which we call the online assessment portal. That person will log in with the username and password and will be presented with this portal. As you can see, we have 4 chapters in this questionnaire. Here are all the questions. The idea then again is that that person basically answers all these questions using drop downs or open text fields. The person can also make comments, can upload attachments. Yeah, so the idea is that you interact with these people and you collect all the evidence that you're looking after, right? Once that is completed, the person is able to submit the questionnaire, and that will basically end the questionnaire, close out the questionnaire. On your side in Eramba, what you see is more or less this. The online assessment is located on the compliance management module and down here. And as you can see, I have one questionnaire here called the GDPR questionnaire France. That's what you see here, right? This is the questionnaire. As you see in here, I have one questionnaire, which is in this sample for France, but let's say that I have another office, let's say in Germany. I could create a second questionnaire, could reuse these questions and send it out to my German colleagues. So you basically create one online assessment per target. Yeah. The module is split into 4 things, as you can see here. The first one includes the assessments itself, so the online assessments. The second includes the questions. Okay? Remember that an assessment is nothing more than a group of questions. The third one here includes the findings, because you can document findings. Findings are basically ways for you to record and set a deadline and owners for things that you don't really like much. So let's say the questionnaire, you have a question said, do you have a security policy? And the German office comes back and said, no, we don't have that. Well, you can log in a finding if you want, and with the deadline and owners and so on to follow up. You also have audit trails. Audit trails allows you to basically know exactly what happened, what actions were taken at all times with all the questionnaires. So when someone logged in, when the questionnaire started, when it stopped, when an attachment was uploaded, this is fundamental if you want to have audit trails again on what's going on. Questionnaires have basically 2 roles, and these are these 2, the auditor and the auditee. You will be defining these people, right? So the auditor is basically the person that has the interest in making these questions, and the auditee is the person that has to respond to your questions. As you can see, they both must be user accounts in Eramba, because of course they have to log in to the portal to provide you with feedback. The questionnaire that you show in the portal is nothing more than a CSV file, and that CSV file of course is created by you. Eramba will provide you with a template that you need to follow in order to create these questionnaires, but as you can see, it's pretty simple. I have here an example for you. Here we have the questionnaire is basically organized in what we call chapters and the questions within these chapters, and then for each question you will have a set of options you can define. So in these questionnaires, you can see we have 4 chapters, and here are all the questions. So as you can see here, I have chapter number 1, chapter number 2, and chapter number 3, right? Here I have the title of the chapter, the description of the chapter. Here I have the question number, the question title, and the description. So as you can see, this is the number of the chapter, the name of the chapter, the description of the chapter, the number of questions, the title of the question, and the description. Now, when it comes to collecting feedback, you have 3 options. One of the options is what we call an open answer, and that will be this kind of paragraph text. The other option is a predefined answer, and that will be a drop-down, where you will define what are the options of the drop-down. The third option is basically to have these 2 put together, so people will be able to provide you with feedback and as well use the drop-down. When you use the drop-down, you need to tell Eramba what the options will be for that drop-down. And as you can see, you split the possible answers using the pipe character. In this example, we have yes, no, and I'm not sure. Now, you can trigger warnings when a specific message is shown. So in this case, is you selected in this column. So if someone will select no, then you know that the message that will be shown to that person will be this one here, because as you can see, there is the message will be this one here, because the first pipe is saying, well, if they choose nothing will be shown. If they select no, then I will show in this piece of text, and if they select the third option, I'm not sure, the last option will be shown. When you have predefined answers, so the drop down, you can also set up a scoring. So you can say, well, this question is worth 10 points, and depending on what they choose, you will multiply this value by this one here for whatever is selected. So if they select yes, they will get 10 times 10, no, 0 times 10, and I'm not sure will be 10 times 5. You can also allow people to select the option whether they want to see comments and attachments or both. So you might not want them to all the time see the comments and attachments, you might want that to be an optional. That way you can basically build your questionnaire and upload it. The online assessment portal is one of the many portals Eramba has, and by default is disabled. That means that if you want to use this functionality, the first thing you should do is to enable it. You do that by going to settings and authentication, online assessments, and enabling this button here. Once you do that, the portal will rely on whatever authentication method you selected as in the main portal. Okay, so if you selected LDAP, Eramba will try LDAP, then it will try an local account, otherwise it will try local account. The way the portal looks like is straightforward. You have your chapters, the questions, so people will basically simply say, well, yes, I don't know, or will selecting. As they do that, answers get complete. Once the feedback is provided to you, you can trigger different notifications. We will get to that later on, but basically you can get notifications, and of course when you come here in Eramba, you will also get the feedback. So basically the answers will become completed, and you will be able to review them from here if you want. Now, as they provide feedback, they might also have questions, and they can do these questions by using the comments button. So if they click on the comments button, you can say, well, I don't understand these. They could also provide attachments if you want, so your question can say, well, answer these and provide attachments. So they will, by clicking here, they will be putting comments. Once you log in here, you can review that kind of feedback. Actually, you can review the feedback on the main Eramba portal, which that basically is this one, or also logging in the portal as the auditor. Only the auditor and the auditee can log in the portal. They see pretty much the same thing. So you can review feedback either using this portal or this one here, whatever is more comfortable. You can do both things pretty much the same way in both sides. Yeah. Now, this questionnaire is this one here. I'm just using it for testing. Yeah. And as you can see, I have 12 questions. These are the auditor, the auditee. This is the questionnaire I'm using. It started. I can see when the activity went on. Yeah. How many updates since the last login? There's been 70% of the questions have been answered, and 83 has been unanswered. So if I go to my feedback, so the questions have been answered, what Eramba will do when I click on the 17% is take me to the questions tab. Remember, here's where all your questions are, and filter directly by this particular online questionnaire and only those that have been completed. Remember, this is nothing more than a filter setting that you can change at any time you want. And as you can see, these are the two ones I got the feedback. So question 1.1 and 1.2, so 1.1 and 1.2 have been answered already. This is the feedback, so the text in there, and in the drop down the answer was this one. Yeah, so that's the feedback you just received. And we also got a comment, and you can see that here. Every time a comment will be, it will be highlighted to you, so that's pretty easy to see. Yeah, so we will say, well, we don't understand either. You can put comments and feedback anytime you want. The portal has a special functionality which we call log. The idea is that once your questions go back and forward in between them and you got the answer you wanted, you can lock it down so people cannot make any more modifications. And the way you do that is by going into the questions into this column here. You select it here and you change the no for a yes. That will basically lock that question, preventing the auditee from making any modification. Remember, you also have the audit trails that help you out. So I will just now lock this app, and that again will be locking that question. I think it was 1.3 that was locked out. So if I want to see that on this side, I will have to reload now. And as you can see, this question, the 1.2, is locked. I can't change the answer anymore. And I've been warned that there is a new comment on chapter 1. When you click in these red warnings, basically Eramba applies a filter up here, which you can reset anytime, and shows you which one has comments. That's the one here that has comments. Okay, so essentially the feedback goes back and forward. Once you're happy with the answers, ideally you should lock the answer so no modifications and down to that. Once all questions have been answered, you will be able to submit the questionnaire. Now it's blocked out, it's grayed out because I haven't answered all my questions. Roughly speaking, the portal allows you to do that kind of interaction. Now at some point you will be creating findings, so things that you don't really like. We will cover that in a minute, but roughly speaking, these findings can be found here. So every question can have findings, okay? And from here the auditee can see those findings provided with feedbacks and attachments again until they are resolved. Online assessments have different statuses, pretty much like every other section in Eramba. You can see some of them in here. An online assessment can be stopped or can be started, could be submitted or not submitted. Yeah. If there's an open finding in the online assessment, you will also see it in yellow as here. So all these different statuses are documented on our documentation, so you really should go and look in that so you make sure you understand all of them. Yeah. Remember that these statuses can be searched by using filters. So if I click here because I want to say give me all the online assessments that have been not submitted, well, submitted must equal yes, and if I click here I will basically start filtering. Remember, filters allows you to make all sort of questions in any of the tabs in here. When you work with the online assessments, you can also create findings. So let's say that they give you feedback on this question here, and you basically say, well, that feedback isn't really good, and I would like whoever responded that to work and improve that issue. That's precisely what we call a finding. Findings are stored in the third tab in here, and as a shortcut you can use it here. So you see I have two online assessments and the second one seems to have one finding. I could go on and show this specific finding. I will do that in a new tab, this one here, or I could simply go and add a new finding directly from here. Let's first look at how a finding looks like. So I came here, I'm now on the third tab. As you can see, Eramba applied the filter that says basically give me all the findings for this questionnaire, and here's the finding. If you look at what the finding looks like, basically it's a title, a deadline, tax, people involved with it, and the status. When this deadline is due, if the finding is open, the status will change to finding expired. Okay, and you can trigger multiple notifications against that if you want. Yeah, this finding is linked to this question in here. Okay, and so you can tell one or more questions. So I could link the same finding to more questions if I want to. From the ODT perspective, when you create a finding, wait, let me see, because there you go. When you log in, you can see the findings in here. So this one has one finding, no findings, no findings. When the ODT links in here, we'll be able to see the finding. All the attachments and comments in the finding will also be visible to them, right? So whatever you put here, remember, will be visible by them. The idea is that you can exchange messages back and forward until the finding is solved. As you can see, well, the ODT cannot change the finding or delete it or anything like that, so there's nothing to be worried about. When I go back to the online assessments, if you have a finding and the finding is open, the status will be this one. If the finding becomes expired, this will be updated to finding expired. Again, you could go and send yourself, create a filter that says give me all the online assessment that have expired findings or open findings, and send that to me as an email if you want, by creating a report notification. Remember, filters allows you to do all these kind of questions, so please make do use. There will be multiple notifications that you can send out, and there's a lot more detail coming into that in a video. You also have a set of filters here that you could use if you want to, and there's also reports as well to be sent. By default, this section comes with system reports that you can see here, with a section report and with an item report. You could see the basic item report by clicking on the menu option, going to reports, and in here. Remember, these reports are completely up to you, so we could see this is the questionnaire for France, the status, the description and the settings, how many questions have been answered and completed, and what the score will be. We seem to have used here a questionnaire based on scores. Scores are very useful to help you quickly determine more or less what kind of feedback, what the quality of the feedback is that the one you received. Yeah, and here at the bottom of the report you can see the questionnaires and the feedback, the answer that you received. Yeah, so this again is a basic report. You can create your own reports using the report functionality. Before you can actually create an online assessment, you will need to enable the portal and create user accounts. All that is basically done here under settings. You will be coming here, you go to the authentication and online assessments, and you make sure that this is enabled. Remember that when this is enabled, the authentication actually applied on the portal will be the one defined here on the main. So it's going to be a looker accounts or LDAP or OAuth. Okay. The second thing you need to do is to create user accounts. My preference is that for the ODTs, I will first create a group that has access to absolutely nothing, okay, because they don't really need to access to this portal at all. They only need to use the online assessment portal. Just to make sure that is the case, I will basically come here and create a group, access to nothing, yeah. By default, when you create a group, typically has access to nothing, so I don't really need to go to the access list and make sure everything is on tick. Let's assume that everything is blocked already. Now I can go to settings, I will go to user management and create the accounts that these people will be using, the auditor and the auditee. Okay, I have them already, I'm just gonna edit them now. So you want to make sure the name, the surname and the email is right. The email is important because notifications will be triggered here. Login name, password, in this case is local accounts. Now one very important piece is that the portals that you're giving access, they will be very limited. They don't need access to the main portal, all they need is access to the online assessment portal. This is very important. With this you make sure that they won't be able to log in to Eramba's main portal. And in terms of access, well, they don't really need access to anything in the main system. That's why we created that special group, and we will give them that group. That will double check, that was like second control to make sure they can't do anything in here. Okay, language, this is all done, so we can now save the accounts. These accounts will be the ones that we'll be using for the online assessment. Now once we have the accounts and the access the portal has been created, we can create notifications, and I will be creating a few of them for you to kind of see what sort of stuff you can do. The first notification I will be creating is a warning notification that triggers when the online assessment has been started. Okay, so when someone starts an assessment, either automatically at midnight or when you manually do it, an email will be sent out. I will send this out to the auditor and to the auditee, and I will be using the default emails. Yeah, so that notification from now on, every time any one of these online assessments is created, an email will be triggered out. Okay, I could create a new notification that will be used as a reminder once the deadline is approaching. Okay, So the start date approaching soon. No, I will be a deadline approaching soon. So to remind you, they have to complete all the feedback, right? All the questionnaires out. So 5 days before the deadline you set, Eramba will be sending that email out. Okay, and I will be selecting the users. Yeah. Now we can do the same with the findings. So whenever whenever a finding is created, I want few notifications to be triggered out as well. Yeah. So let's start with this. I will create a warning notification that triggers when a finding has been created, because I want to notify these people about that. And again, as the recipient, I will be selecting. Well, you see, you can select the auditor and the auditee of the online assessment, or the auditor or the auditee of the finding, because the finding has also these fields. I will select the finding ones, yeah, to make sure that whoever is on the finding itself will receive those emails. I want to create also notification when the deadline of the finding is approaching. So 5 days before the deadline of the finding, I want them to receive an email. Oops, sorry. And that's it. Yeah. Now I want to send out a few reports. Okay. So I want to get an email that shows what findings will be due in the next week. I don't know if I have a default filter for that. No, so we will create it. So I'll go to filters, new, and I will say send me an email when the deadline, I would say it's 14 days before. So before 14 days in the future, I want all the findings that basically expire in the next 14 days to be sent out to me. And so you can see these two apply because the deadline is now at the end of the month. Actually, the condition could be better, because I could say that the status is open. Okay, because if it's open, right? So what I will do now is I'll go to manage and I go to save this filter. Yeah. I could leave all this as it is, and I will save this one up. And now I want that filter to be going out to me as an email. So I create a report notification. I want a report. No, sorry, a filter. How is it called? Here. So we want this to be sent out to us. Skip if the empty results. Send that to me every 5 days. I want a CSV, and the recipient for that will be, sorry, it will be my account. Okay. Now let's say that you have the questions. Remember, here is the questionnaires. I want to get us an email every day with all the comments and all the comments and all the attachments that have been sent to my questions, because I don't want to be looking at these all the time, right? I only want to be looking whether they submitted or I've received feedback. So for that, what I want is to have a notification that sends me kind of a digest email. So I go here, I go to comments and attachments, and I create a new one. And I will select digest of comments and attachments, and as a recipient I will select the auditor, right? So now I will receive an email every time there's been comments and attachments. I don't have to be actively logging into Eramba all the time. Yes. As you can see, there's a whole bunch of notifications and reports that you could create and send out to you by email. Okay, so play around with them until you feel comfortable and you fine-tune your own settings. We will do now a simulation of a complete creation of an online assessment, a few exchanges between the auditor and the auditee, blocking the questions out, and yeah, looking at the reports and how that looks like. The idea will be that you have a full idea on how the system works. We will also be setting up some of the notifications that you have in the system. Um, yeah, that will be a complete example. So the first thing we want to do is to make sure we are on the online assessment. I've already enabled the portal on the settings. I go to actions, I go to add, and we set up the name of the online assessment. So we will call it GDPR Germany. The auditor and the auditee, these must be user accounts. I already have them here. Esteban will be the auditor, the auditee will be Robert Johnson. I could select more than one auditee if I want. Yeah. Third party, this gives me the option to tell whom I'm actually doing that, and typically whom that will be a company. So under organizations and third parties, that will be somewhere here, you could create a third party and link it here. That could help you to create a filter that says give me all the online assessments that we have done against a given third party. Okay, so that relationship allows you to do basically that. You could use tags. For the time being, I'm not going to use tags. Questionnaires. You could upload your questionnaire or create a new one by downloading the CSV template and completing it. I will be using the questionnaires we already have indoor here. The vendor portal is basically what the auditee will see. So welcome. Yeah, I could write here any kind of description I want. Remember that this is allowing you to play a little bit with HTML. Allow finding downloads. I will allow that so that when I create a finding, the people will be able to download them as a CSV. Questions and incomplete questionnaire submit. This means people do not have to complete all questions to submit the questionnaire. That's what we want to do now for the sake of being quick here. Now the layout. I'm now in the schedule. I need to tell when the questionnaire will start. The soonest date is basically tomorrow, and the end date is by the date that the questionnaire should be finished. You can trigger notifications against this date and this date. Okay, so 1 day before, 5 days before, you can send multiple notifications out, and you can tell to whom you want this notification to be sent, to the auditor, to the auditee, to both of them, and so on. Auto stop. This will make Eramba stop automatically the questionnaire on this date. Remember, when you stop the online assessment, people can no longer log in into the portal, and so they cannot provide any more feedback. Now, if you would like to make this questionnaire recurrent, that is to be sent out, let's say every year or so, we could do so by enabling this and giving here the frequency. So I say more or less every year send this questionnaire out, and if I click in here, when the questionnaire is cloned, so basically what happens is that in 360 days from the starting date, Eramba will clone the questionnaire and will send it out again. Now I could also say that I want the questions that were filled originally to be included on the questionnaire. Okay, I will not put the recurrence now because I don't think we need it now. And now, as you can see, there's a bunch of notifications that you can create in here. Okay, and so we will be playing with them in a little while. Yeah, just gonna save this now. So I have here our questionnaire. As you can see, it's not submitted, it's stopped, of course, because it will not start until tomorrow. That's the date we set. Nevertheless, if I want to start it now, I can simply click here and that will get it started. The URL that people will be logging is this one here. Okay, so to start the questionnaire out, I will simply start it here. Yep. And now let's simulate that the auditee Robert Johnson logs in and provides us with feedback. Yeah. Just before I do that, I want to make sure that you understand the three tabs we have here. Okay, in particular these two. As you can see here, we have 3 questionnaires, and each one of them has 12 questions. If I go here, remember what I will see is all questions for all questionnaires. Okay, and again, that now is not a lot because I only have 3 and I have each one of them has only 20 questions, but this could be very, very long table. See, I have 36 results on my all items filters. We have some other filters loading by default, the answered items as well, so which one of these questions have been answered, and the unanswered items as well. Yeah. Now let me go here. Instead of clicking in here and seeing all questions, what I can do is I can say, well, just show me the questions for this questionnaire. I don't want to see all of them. And remember, you can use the shortcuts. Yeah, there are many of them. Every time you see this arrow down, the questions, findings will take you to the findings section. Answer items, unanswered items, all these are basically shortcuts, okay, that you can use. Fair enough. Now let's go and copy the URL portal. I will now log in here. Right, so now I'm simulating being the auditee. As you can see, I can see all these. I could download the questions because that's what we set up, and I go on and answer the question. So name of the organization is going to be Eramba Limited. Do you manage private data? I'm not sure. And I will post a question that says, what do you mean private data? Yeah. Now I did 2 questions. Now let's think for a second what happens from the auditor perspective. Now if I refresh this thing here, what you will see is that basically the counters have been updated, indicating that feedback has been provided. Okay, what I mean by that is that as I go here, it's now telling me that 70% of the questions have been answered, 83 are still unanswered. So if I click here, and I will open this in a new tab, I can now see that I have these 2 questions that have been answered. If I want to review the answer, again, remember, if it's an open answer, the answer is here. If it's a drop down, it's here. Okay, and I see I have a comment, so I could say, well, look at the question description, please. Correct? So now the ODT will come here when he loads or refreshes screens. The system will mention to them, will highlight that there is an answer. So there's a new comment in here. By clicking, the filters apply, yeah, and the question in the comment is in here, right? So look at the question description, please. And as you can see, well, the description basically says what private data is. So the user will go and say, well, actually, no, we don't manage any of these data. Yeah. So this goes back and forward. As this goes forward, you review the first question, Eramba Limited, that's right. So what you do is you will be locking the feedback to make sure there's no changes. Typically, I mean, you're not forced to lock the feedback, but that's typically we do to tag those questions that are already closed, that they no need further reviews. Okay, when you are in the online assessment, I'm gonna refresh this up now. You see now the question has been locked, so the answer cannot be modified anymore. When we come here, typically what we do is we only need to look at, let me just go scroll to the left. See, I typically will look at the uncompleted items because I know the completed ones, I've reviewed them and I've done everything I had to do with them. Okay, remember you also have your audit trails. Okay, if I open this in a new tab, what happens here is I will see all the trails for this specific online assessment. Okay, so you see first the answer I'm not sure, there's been a few comments back and forward, and at the end the answer was changed to no. This allows you to basically be very specific into what happened when. Yeah, remember, you can use filters at any point in time to find out specific items with the search help. Yeah. Now at some point, um, um, the user will be saying, well, let's say, do you manage private data? Say yes. Oh, we answered this one already. At some point, you will not like the feedback you receive, and you might want to create a finding. Okay, remember that creating findings isn't that difficult at all. You can do it here if you want, or you can go to the specific question. Let's now load all the questions for this online assessment, and say you want to create a finding for question 1.2. Yeah, so in the findings you come here and you add a new finding. So we will say, let's say something like this. Yeah, against this deadline you will be able to send notifications, you can create tags. These are the people involved. Typically the ODT will be the person that has to fix this problem. You want to leave this open until it's actually fixed, and then once you select the date for closure, it will automatically close it. And yeah, so we will just go on now and save it. Findings again are the ways, the means you have to document things that need to be followed up. Okay, so now as you can see, you can now see from your questions which one has open findings. Okay, the finding will change the status to finding expired if the deadline, if the due date, if the date is due, sorry, and the finding is open. Yeah, I could also see the findings by going here, and if I click show, I'm basically taken to the finding list, to this tab in here, where all the findings will be shown. Okay, all items, open findings, closed findings, and expired findings. Yeah, you have 4 filters by default in here. Okay, remember this is a section of its own, and you can create the notifications, filters, and these kind of things. Now let's say that the user will now submit, so simulating that all has been answered. Now when I go to the online assessment, as you can see, it's now stopped. Yes, it has been submitted, but I still have an open finding. Okay, so at any point in time, I am able to keep working with the finding and until this solved. Now remember that since it's stopped, the user won't be able to see this online questionnaire anymore. This one is still open because probably, yeah, this one is this one here, and as you can see, still accepting answer. That's why it's shown here. So if you have findings open and you still want to exchange comments and attachments in regards to that finding, you need to make sure that you keep it started. Okay, until that is over. Otherwise, the user won't be able to log in and write you the findings, comments, and attachments. So roughly speaking, that's how you go back and forward with the questions. And if you want to analyze your answers, you remember you use this tab where you have all the feedback. Yeah. If you want, you can also look at the reports, which will allow you to graphically see more or less what kind of how this questionnaire looks like for the end. Hopefully this video helped you to understand how you create an online assessment, the back and forward, and how you deal with the closing.